afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can I wish you a happy new year? And I hope we're going to make some good decisions in 2024, as we have done in the past, based on sound planning policy. So welcome to the Strategic Planning Committee meeting here in County Hall, Tuesday, the 2nd of January. Apologies for absence. Have we received any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillors Foster, Flux and Runner-Thompson.
Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting. The minutes of the strategic planning meeting held here on Tuesday, the 5th of December, have been circulated. Are members happy that these are a true record of the meeting? Agreed. All agreed? Thank you. Any disclosures of members' interests in our one item on the agenda today? Georgina.
Chair, I'd just always like to say if I've been in contact with the applicants and they have and express sympathy about the time it's taken, but I've come here completely open-minded.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we go on to item 4 on the agenda, determination of planning applications. And as usual, I will just quickly go through the procedure. As chair, normally I introduce the application, ask you if you've seen any site visit videos. We then ask the planning officer to give us any updates, any changes to the recommendation, and the planning officer to present their report. We then have a public speaking slot, 5 minutes for objectors, 5 minutes for local member, parish councillor, county councillor, and then 5 minutes for an applicant or supporter. The members of the planning committee are then invited to ask questions to our planning officer. Then we begin the debate, and we ask for a proposal, we ask for it to be seconded, and then we debate the issue. And then we take a vote on the application before us. So, ladies and gentlemen, we only have one application this afternoon. This is item number 5. And it is a reserved matters application for access, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale for 110 dwellings related to a previous planning permission. And this is at land east of Spring Hill, Sunnyside, Tweedmouth in Northumberland. I'm now going to ask our planning officer, David Love, to present his report and take us through the application. David, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just wait for the presentation to appear on the screen. Brilliant. Thank you very much. So, can I just check with members that everyone has had sight of and read the addendum report, which was, I think, circulated earlier today? Excellent. I'll continue with the presentation, Chair. So just some minor updates and for members, just as per this slide on the screen. So there's a typo in paragraph 7.21, which should refer to 110 units, not 100. Consultees section under education, it simply says comments, apologies. This is a hangover from writing draft and then finalising it. It should have set out that our Education Department had a request for a commuted sum of £365,000, but we can't apply such contributions at the reserved matters stage. And I also wanted to point out to members that the application is subject to approval. It's an approval subject to a CMS contribution, but I wanted to point out to members that the original Section 106 was signed under the original hybrid consent, secured what's on the screen, 2 lots of facilities contributions, one for maintenance and one for provision, which totalled £115,200, a transport contribution of £100,000, and phase 1, which has been built, and some members may know it, it's called Barley Rise, transferred to a registered social landlord. That was a total of 40 units. So that's what's been secured so far in Section 106, and the application before you is subject to an addition of £67,650 towards the coastal mitigation scheme. So a total financial contribution of £282,850 plus the phase 1, which was 100% affordable. So this is the location plan. Apologies for the poor red line squiggle there. The site is at the southern end of the wider settlement of Berwick-upon-Tweed. Some of you may know the Swan Centre. That's in the very top left corner of this image. The large empty space with the lines across it just to the north of the site is a playing field associated with Berwick Academy, and Berwick Academy is further to the top of the image. To the right-hand side is the housing development of Highcliffe, and further east of that again is Eastcliff. The coastal area you can see there is Spittal and a number of coastal designations pertaining to the CMS contribution. The main road adjacent to the site, which runs along the boundary of the black line to the left of the red line squiggle, is the main road leading out to the A1. The black line represents a settlement boundary, whilst the entire site lies in an area liable for coastal mitigation strategy contribution, as informed by the designations along the coast. So this is the site layout plan. The application consists of 110 dwellings, and I'll just read out the various house types. We've got 36 three-bedroom semi-detached, 11 three-bedroom detached, 9 four-bedroom detached bungalows, 3 three-bedroom bungalows, 2 two-bedroom bungalows, 8 three-bedroom villas, 38 four-bedroom villas, and 3 five-bedroom villas. So there's a fair range of housing types, and I think they should go some way towards addressing the current lack of choice in the market in the Northumberland area. Some important features to point out: the proposal represents phases 2 to 4 of the hybrid or parent consent. The parent consent granted 40 units in detail and a further 110 in outline. Phase 1 has been built and is referred to as Barley Rise. The blue units in the image represent this phase, the top right-hand side of the image. The yellow area is the Spring Hill Roman Camp. It's a scheduled monument. The proposals include safeguarding measures such as planting a wildflower meadow and putting a protective fence. There will be some access, the details of which is still to be thrashed out, but there's a planning condition which seeks to secure the specific details of the fence line and access arrangements. But it is expected that there will be some form of public access to be catered for to the benefit of residents. It's also possible that we'll have an interpretation board as well. It's not evidenced on this plan, but there's a history of coal extraction with shafts and adits across the site. The Coal Authority and Public Protection have been heavily involved with addressing this issue, and I can confirm neither has an objection on these grounds, so we can be confident this has been addressed by the applicant. The southern boundary of the site this would be Cow Road. This leads to a nearby holiday park, which you can just see on the right-hand side, the very corner of the reception building. We've got good footpath links throughout the site towards Highcliffe for some facilities, including a pub, shop and play facilities. And there are already bus stops on the main road just outside the site, providing access further afield. So I appreciate through a lot of different housing types at members there, so just a slide just detailing in bullet points the various house types. I shan't linger on that, but just to give members a flavour of the extent of different types being provided for. Oh, sorry. What have I done? Yeah, sorry. So I've got some examples of house types. I haven't got all 8 on screen, but I wanted to give members more of a flavour of the house types, and then I've got photographs of Barley Rise as well, which will give members more of a ground sense check of what the development would sort of more appear like. So this would be the 3-bedroom bungalow with integral garage. And this would be the 3-bedroom semi-detached. And yeah, sorry, the previous one was a 4-bedroom detached, and this is a 3-bedroom detached. So a series of photographs. I don't think the 2D images don't necessarily do it justice, but they do provide members perhaps a flavour of what the approved plan, hopefully suggested approved plans would be. A series of photographs of the site now under Barley Rise. I think the pictures of Barley Rise will illustrate quite well what members can expect in terms of the layout, house types and materials, and the general flavour. This is the access road from the main road, the A1167. A separate matter, but I believe it's proposed to extend the 30-mile-per-hour speed limit, but that's a matter for the Highways Authority. 20-mile-per-hour limit within the site itself. So the access would be to my... Yes, sorry. The access road would be to my right. The main road would be on the right, leading up past the white farmhouse. You can see on the right-hand side of the image. The Roman fort is at the top. You can see where the road sort of bisects the rising land. That's basically, it bisects the Roman fort, camp. And the hedge line you can see in the top of the image there, that's to be maintained and enhanced. Again, as a planning condition to protect the hedgerows on the site. So I'm standing up near the hedgerow. You can just see the edge of the hedgerow there on the right-hand side. I'm looking back towards Barley Rise now. Again, just to give members a flavour of the finishing materials, you've got some bungalows on the left-hand side, so a degree of varying heights and features. So a two-tone approach to the materials finish, grey roof tiles, shows a mix in building types, and it's essentially what we can expect. So I'm standing on top of the Roman camp, looking back towards Barley Rise. The hedge line also is the line of a footpath, which is to be protected and maintained throughout. There's separate legislation which protects that. We have an area over here on the left where my pointer is. That area, my understanding is that area would be developed first, and then we would move up to phase 1, 2, and then, phases 2, 3, and then 4. The holiday camp is over this direction, following the line of Cal Road. It sort of comes back in itself. Again, on top of the Roman camp, looking back towards Barley Rise, main road there on the left. And now I'm standing on the site looking towards the coast, looking south. This would be Cal Road, along the edge of that hedge there. So a couple of images now of Barley Rise. You can see Barley Rise, it's got some fairly wide streets. We've got the road, we've got the pavement either side, some dropped curbs leading to houses. Houses are generally set back, providing an element of green space. To the front of the house, we've got a degree of street trees and some soft landscaping, and this sort of character we'd be aiming to maintain. The access road is up towards where these trees are, at the end of the site here. You can see the bungalows on the right-hand side and a mix of semi-detached houses on the left. Again, we've got wide streets, soft landscaping, which does provide a fairly positive finish. So it's recommended that the application is granted subject to planning conditions as per the members' reports pack and an update to the Section 106 agreement securing the provision of £67,650 towards coastal mitigation strategy. Thank you, Chair.
We have no public speakers today, so it's straight into questions from the members. Over to you, members. Councillor Hill.
Thank you. I've got two questions which are linked. The first is, could you just tell me a bit more about the work that's been done? I know you're saying it's separate, but on the highways issue, because it is a dangerous area existing, and with the expansion of Elmbank and with this expansion, we've had, in the area, we've had a few fatalities which really focuses the mind over the Christmas period. So if you could tell me a little bit more and just give me some assurance that's been taken seriously, because I know myself and Councillor Hunter, this is the area, this is just in Councillor Hunter's ward, but crosses over into mine. In terms of the roads, so could you just give me assurance that that's been taken seriously, the highways and the extension of the speed limit? The second point, in terms of the section 106, you said that there was £100,000 for transport. If you could tell me a bit more about that, and is that linked with potential scheme for what I just referred to in terms of highways improvement? And finally, just to clarify something that's come up before, so this 67,000 for the coastal mitigation, is it right to say that schemes in Berwick like this one is contributing to that, but we don't actually get any benefit from the scheme itself? Is that correct? Because that's been suggested previously.
Great. I'll pick up on the first 2 points, and then for the final point, I'll pass to Rob Murphin. So the original application was subject to a road audit, and that didn't assess 40 houses, it assessed 150. Yes, you're absolutely right. I know the road very well. My mother-in-law lives up in Highcliffe, so I travel in via that route. So I know the road really well. It is a fast stretch of road. So my understanding is, and like I say, it's a separate consenting regime, but my understanding is for the 30-mile-per-hour limit to be moved up towards the entrance of this site. Now that should help, because cars do come over very quickly, as you all know. So like I say, it was subject to a full safety audit as requested by Highways. Again, Highways, so that established the principle of 150 units, the original consent. So Highways didn't raise an issue at the time following the safety audit, and they haven't raised any concerns this time around either. Appreciate a lot's happened since 2014, 2015, I think, when phase 1 was granted in detail. But all I can do is go by what Highways are telling me, and they haven't raised any safety issues. Like I say, my understanding is that 30-mile-per-hour limit will be extended, and that is what Highways were satisfied with. The £100,000 contribution towards transport, I was furiously looking to see if I could establish how that had come about. It was, as you appreciate, way before my time with the council. And the case officer wasn't around today. My understanding is it covers some of, not all of it. I couldn't nail down exactly what all of it would be contributed towards, but it is in the file somewhere, and I can come back to you directly after this if you would like, once I had a chance to speak to Tony Lowe, who was the original officer. But certainly provision of bus stops. There's a bus stop already just heading into the town, not quite opposite the access, so just up to the left over. Road's been widened, and then there's another bus stop just heading out of town on the left-hand side. I believe it was contribution towards that, but I'm afraid I couldn't give you a definitive answer as to what that money's to go for. But I can come back to you on this separately if you would like on that matter. So I'll just scribble that down. And if I can pass the CMS question on to Rob.
As members will have heard several times, the coastal mitigation strategy contribution is less of a contribution and more of a requirement, in that Natural England placed what is in effect a holding direction on us granting any residential development in a 10-mile strip by the entire coast of Northumberland, because of the effect of increased population on sensitive landscapes and sensitive areas of the coast. Not every individual mile of the coast benefits directly from the coastal mitigation work, because it's predominantly aimed at things like sensitive dunes. But what we do make sure is that events for the public, whether guided tours and the public are involved in what's called the Space for Shorebirds initiatives, is spread out around the coast, and those are very well attended, and we have held events up in the north of the county as well. Okay.
Are you happy with that?
Yeah, it's
You can understand.
yeah, it's the issue is, and it's always a good question, because without us having a contribution to it, each scheme like this would have to negotiate with Natural England to show how they are going to make sure that people who are living there, through things like dog walking, won't have an adverse impact on the coast, and that is very difficult and could prove to be very expensive. So it's done on a tariff on all development up and down the coast to avoid Natural England, placing an effective embargo on new residential development in places like Berwick as well.
Thank you. Councillor Dodd.
Yeah, a number of us that were on the former LDF, Local Development Framework, that got us over the line to where we are today. Now, then, Berwick was a sticking point with about 1,000 plus houses in the scheme that were not going to be built, or they were just stuck. Is this part of that, or is this? It is. So that's a positive.
Absolutely, and we have a housing target for the county, which you'll be aware of. However, there are underheated and overheated parts of the market, and Berwick is an area, while we have been granting planning permissions and putting allocations in the local plan, house building hasn't been happening at a modern scale, and this is part of an old commitment that we factored into the local plan strategy. So this site was in our minds when we put the local plan together, but it's been difficult to get over the line.
Thank you. Any more questions? Malcolm.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick ones. I hope we're asking the developers now to put appropriate trees in, because it didn't seem to be on that picture. But I presume the houses that have been built in phase one completely fill the affordable housing issue for the whole of the development. In other words, these new 110 houses are going to be privately owned.
Yes, so the entirety of phase one, 40 units out of 150 that were granted under the outline, which goes above and beyond our current requirements for affordable housing in the area. So that's essentially the affordable housing contribution for the entire scheme. So the 110 houses here, are well, as far as I'm aware, and as far as the planning, if members were minded to grant it, the planning permission would be concerned, would be private. Whether the developer then goes and does a deal with an RSL is entirely separate and up to them. With respect to the trees, yes, trees can have a hard time in that location. We've got a planning condition there for landscaping for the final details. What I would certainly be doing is, come the time of discharge of conditions, would be to ask our ecologists, is that species, is that appropriate? There's no point putting something that's not going to survive those high winds, the salty air, and it's just going to die.
I'm more concerned with putting appropriate trees into housing developments, because I have a lot of issues with trees that are about 20, 30 years old, and they're now towering over houses, and residents just don't want them. My other question, there seems to be...
Can I just come in there, Councillor Robertson, to support you really? And I know this is an issue that Councillor Reid has repeatedly brought up. You know, landscaping is important, but, you know, trees have roots, they've got big leaves, they introduce shade into properties, and, you know, Councillor Robinson's question is very pertinent, because we want the right trees in the right place. We don't want trees that are going to, you know, grow very rapidly and block out light or do damage to the foundations of houses. So, you know, I'm right behind you, but I've heard Councillor Reid ask this question many times. Get the right trees in the right place, so they don't cause problems.
Throughout the whole county. My next question is the house types. There seems to be a heck of a variation, which seems strange for a developer to be developing privately, given the amount of variation there is. I mean, there must be... Is there any reason for that?
That's just what they presented to me. But
So
yes,
they
there's
think
8
they're going to
different
sell
house
them.
types.
That's what I mean. They think there's a need for
Yeah.
that type, house type.
circle with the chair, yeah. On affordable housing schemes, we would be asking the developer for a certain mix of house type and size. On this market-based scheme, because it is so mixed, we haven't offered any comment on the suitability of that mix. It appears that the developer has just looked at the market at the moment and done a bit of spread betting, really, and covered themselves. And it's to be welcome that there are bungalows in there, because most developers do not go down the route of bungalows, but they've clearly identified there's a strong market for that, and that is to be welcomed.
Well, there's two-bedroom ones at 110, so, but at least there's two. My last question, if I can, is to Rob, and it's more generic. It's about the coastal mitigation money. And it's following on from Councillor Hill's point. Time and time again, we get these applications and we rubber stamp the coastal mitigation money because we're told it's a requirement, basically. But it is part of the application which we've got to consider. What I don't see is anything done with that money. Now, you're saying it is, and, you know, fair enough, but we don't get to see that. We don't know where it's going, but we're asked, you know, to accept it and to put it into the application. And on good faith, we do that all the time, but it would be nice to see exactly where it's going, because I wouldn't. There could be an argument that it might be all going to Linemouth, to the clear-up.
Just from the chair, can I say, we have had presentations to the North area where works have been explained to us along the coast in North Northumberland. So, you know, I'm pleased to say, yes, we have had evidence of where the money is being spent on signboards and, you know, trying to get people to move along the coast on paths and in the right areas, establishing breeding beds for birds. So, yes, you know, like yourself, you know, I'm very sceptical. We dish out vast quantities of cash for this coastal mitigation, and it's important that we as a committee occasionally see what it's been spent on. So, Rob, if we can have more of this type of explanation of where this money's been spent, it would be good.
Yeah, what we can do is we can circulate the link to our website where the information is on there about this. But given that this is a consistent ask on residential schemes over much of the county, we will bring a short report here and we'll provide it as an annex to the agenda, setting out a bit of a retrospective look at the coastal mitigation service. Yeah. We have, I would add that we've had visitors both from continental Europe and from North America, visitors over here who are looking to replicate this approach in other parts of the world, because it's regarded as international best practice. Okay. Just to be clear for the rest of the members of the committee, the scheme includes 11 bungalows in total. I think you said two.
Two-bedroom ones, I said.
Sorry, yes, there's two-bedroom bungalows and three-bedroom bungalows.
Yeah.
I just know because there's a pent-up demand for one-bedroom bungalows in my area. You know.
Chair, sorry if I may, I misunderstood Councillor Robinson's comment about trees, and you very helpfully verified that. Just to confirm, yes, it is an issue, recognised issue, and I'm just checking the conditions. We would expect the applicant to come forward with a management plan for the street trees and for the general landscaping areas as well. So there would be a management plan which hopefully, and the trees should be suitably distanced from houses, that you wouldn't end up with the massive extent of roots damaging property, etc. So we would be expecting the applicant to satisfy the requirements for a maintenance regime there, keep the trees suitably lopped and topped and so on, just to make sure they don't cause nuisance and to make sure the residents remain happy with them. So hopefully that's, we recognise it, and essentially we're saying to the developer, it's your responsibility to put them in and maintain them to a level that's suitable, and to have a mechanism in place that residents can raise issues and concerns and have them managed properly. So that's all detailed in the as part of the conditions. So I hope that answers your question better. So apologies, I misunderstood your comment before.
It does, yes, and good luck with getting developers they'll agree, but whether they do it or not is a different thing. What I would suggest is we were going to have, a Northumberland design guide. Could we not put tree types in that, just to make sure they're appropriate, they're not going to get massive, the roots aren't going to damage drives and gable ends and everything that's happened to me in my ward. You know, let's get the thing right for a change.
Absolutely. The Northumberland Design Guide is ongoing at the moment, very early stages of inception. I'm on the working group of that, so I'll take a note and I'll put it through the my colleagues who are sort of formulating that. But I'll definitely put down correct tree types, etc., management regimes, and we'll bounce it through the ecologists as well to make sure we get the right ones.
Any more questions? Yes. Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions. One, firstly, was with regard to access for buses in this development. These kind of developments on the side of edge of settlements, obviously there's bus stop on the main road, but actually having a town bus service that could actually go around the estate itself, although it might not be going to happen in the short term, it might in the longer term be something that could happen, but it can only happen if you've got a through route. So I just wonder whether you could confirm there is a kind of through route for a bus service. So that was the first point. The second point, we've got a scheduled ancient monument, which is rather unusual to have in a housing development. Now, I appreciate that there's nothing, I don't think there's anything to see above ground with regard to this, but I was just wondering what the kind of thinking was in terms of the scheduled ancient monument and how the scheme kind of fits in with that. I guess in future there could be some interpretation or whatever from whatever was on that site, and it could be somewhere that people visit. So I'm just kind of curious as to what the thinking around how we've approached that.
I'll pass over to Mr. Murphy with respect to the buses, but yeah, I'll pass over to Rob, and if there's anything I wish to add to that, I will do. But with respect to the Scheduled Ancient Monument, yeah, bit unusual indeed. In terms of a buffer zone and setback area to protect its setting, its wider setting, it's unfortunately the main road leading out of Berwick sort of bisected the Roman camp, so you've got the water treatment works, I think it is, on the other side of the road, and that's taken up that portion of it. So we're sort of trying to protect what we have left. At the time of the hybrid consent, the parent consent, if you will, the applicant demonstrated that a suitable buffer zone would be able to be achieved without damaging the setting of it. We just need to agree some finer details of it. In terms of if people were to come and visit it with interpretation boards, I personally would like to see some interpretation boards there so people can see the value of what they have on their doorstep. I didn't even know it was there until I picked up the application, and I've been visiting the area since 2000. So I wasn't aware of it. But I certainly, there's no provision within the development for sort of visitor parking, for that's additional above and beyond the requirements. But there's a lot of, there's unrestricted on-street parking. There's quite a lot. There's the two bus services going up and down that main road. There's the bus service comes into Highcliffe as well, which there's a footpath which goes directly from where the bus turning circle is in Highcliffe right the way through the development towards the main road. That would allow access as well. So I think there's enough there in terms of access options and modes of transport that I think really people would generally, you'd be out for a walk, I think. It's a popular area with walkers, and you'd stop by and look at it as a curiosity and hopefully be able to go in and enjoy it and understand the site a bit more. So that was the sort of thinking behind that. But yes, I would agree, a little bit strange, but as I say, it was established at the parent consent stage.
Yeah, in terms of the bus question, this regularly crops up in that bus operators need to look at operational efficiency, and they normally do not like coming off of the main route and doing a bit of a loop. It's always a balance between us making routes as attractive as possible to the private sector, and that's having the density of development along the route. But I would be very surprised if a bus company would want to come off a route and do a loop, because they have times, and I assume that some of the routes coming along here will be fairly long routes, and they want to be accruing for the time. I think the same issue is playing out at the application at Alnmouth Station as well. Okay.
Councillor Dodd.
I'll be brief, Chair. When you buy a new house, your developer fits in something called snagging. I'd never really heard of it for a while, but now I do. Where they go back and fix things that haven't been done correctly. Do we as a council, because we've been hauled back into here a number of times, paths at Cramlington, safety equipment, road traffic signage, the things like a zebra crossing, that as soon as people move in, they get a petition together and they want this, they want that. Have we covered all exits, as it were, so that when those times come and the developer says, I don't want anything to do with that, like the soil at Stannington or whatever, do we have any safeguards to just hold them by what they say? And I'm saying this, we've only got one thing on the agenda, so there's no real pressure. And I can say that because we seem to be coming back here time and time again with things that have not been done or need to be done.
Chair, if you accounts this one. Yeah, and that's another good question. Through the highways adoption process, what we do now is that we do not allow highways to be adopted by ourselves until we are completely satisfied that all the works have been done to the correct standard by the developer. And that unfortunately means that sometimes there are significant delays to roads being adopted, which has implications for things like salt bins going down and things like that. But the key issue is that now we do not adopt roads built by private developers until they are the correct standard, because from the point that we take on the adoption, the state then pays for their maintenance and upkeep. So what we do now is we push back on the adoption of them, and that unfortunately doesn't always keep residents happy, because that can lead to delays. But that is the safeguard we've got. In terms of your wider comment about snagging, it's probably worth discussing now briefly. There's also the issue that there's the build quality of the properties themselves, and this is an issue with many of the volume house builders who have multiple faults on new built housing. But we have no role in terms of that sort of which is like a customer product purchase agreement with the developer, apart from we can check out whether or not they have been fundamentally constructed in the right way or not via checking that the building control requirements have been met. With the note, though, however, now that major developers do often use their own building control agents as well, rather than the county council now, since the mid-90s when that was semi-privatised. Okay.
Thank you. We've got three more questions, one from Councillor Darwin, one from Councillor Ball and another one from Councillor Wallace. Councillor Darwin, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Follows on actually quite nicely from what Councillor Dodd was saying. I was going to ask a question. Do we see a need to ask the developer, or have we asked the developer, to put a lump sum aside should they walk off the development when all the units are sold and the roads, the pathways aren't finished? I only ask that question because I have that problem in Stannington now, and we're going through quite tedious and hard times, and then the residents quite rightly want their roads adopted, as you alluded to there, but the development's not finished, and I don't see an end to this being finished, and it won't be adopted because it's not an adoptable standard. But the developers walked off site and turned their back to it. I don't want that to happen again to sites like this.
Councillor, quickly, also what we do now is we also ask for a bond up front as well. And remember as well that up until we agree to adopt it, the maintenance is the responsibility of the developer, and we can enforce that as well. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Ball.
Thanks, Chair. So it's just with regards to the construction traffic. There's already existing residents on the site from the previous build. I'm just wondering, will there be any effect? And it does say about like wheeled washers and things like that, but we've all seen where developments next door have had an impact with dust and everything on existing residents. I'm just wondering what the plan is, and will there be any impact on the existing residents?
So there is a construction management condition 25, but as you come into the site, there's in fact, I wonder, is it possible to bring up the site plan, please? There, that one, yeah, perfect. So, and I'll bring up, there we are. So, my understanding is, so as you come in off the main road, the blue units are all the existing houses at Valley Rise. Construction traffic, yes, they would be, well, they wouldn't be going through the residents, through this area here where my pointer is. My understanding is these units here would be completed first. Apologies, this screen isn't on, so I need to keep turning, apologies. And then this hammerhead here is existing, and this would be sort of the main route in. So your construction traffic would be this area, not going through the residents. We wouldn't want it going through residents anyway. Definitely not with the degree of, not how busy that is. So, and there is an existing sort of hammerhead here, which, yes, some of this would link in, and construction traffic would end up on that part of the site. So there would be some degree of disturbance. But, like I say, we've got a construction management plan. We have a, that would limit where construction vehicles are going, wheel washes, etc. And I'm just double checking to see if it's covered under that condition or a separate one, but would usually be seeking them to would be limiting hours of work as well. So you wouldn't end up with antisocial working hours to protect existing residents. So we have considered that, and yeah, there shouldn't be construction traffic going through that area, and we would seek to control that through the condition. And then if they weren't adhering to that, we have our enforcement regime to who can pick that up.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I'd like to ask a couple of questions on ground gas protection. It always concerns me. I recall several years ago a fatality at Stobbswood, and up here at County we formed a working group on Stythe gas. What I read here is us giving permission, but tests haven't been done yet. And I read, and a bit like Bobby Thompson, the late comedian, I have to say I'm not an engineer. So I don't understand what an annulus of service ducts is, except it says they need to be sealed or the gas can come in, which indicates to me there could be a presence of gas. I'm aware in my ward, this is Councillor Robinson quite rightly bases his decision on what happens on his own ward, I relate to what happens in my ward, where an application is there again for not to have to provide these warning systems, for want of a better description, for each home, although an independent inspector said they had to be put in place. So that's been looked at. It's a current application, so I'll just leave that where it is, Chair. So I would like to know what an annulus of service ducts is that prevents gas, to be honest with you. And secondly, I'm sure we do have a policy appertaining to this. Could you assure me that people who will be spending a lot of money moving into a home can do so with lovely trees in the garden, well designed, a bus passing by Martin with great frequency, but won't get blown up because there'll be protection against the gas. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Answer the detail indeed. Couple of things on this site. So one of the reasons it's it's a 2019 application. One of the reasons it took so long is because it's not straightforward. There is a history of mine workings around the site. So a lot of the delay on this one was because we were getting information from the applicant, sending that to Public Protection and to the Coal Authority, and they both kept objecting. And eventually got it over the line. And that wasn't the applicants were wearing them down. The Coal Authority don't do wearing down. They're very strict with what they do, and rightly so, absolutely. So with this one, it's a question of, they've got conditions 6, 7, 8 and 9 all relate to what we're talking about here. So 6 talks about if they discover any contamination that's not previously been discovered. Now, I come across a lot of sites in Northumberland where Public Protection are asking for these conditions. It's pretty common. And that's just the historic nature of Northumberland. And I'm sure members here know that far better than I do. So we're talking about ground gas protection. You're looking at it's in the condition, Code of Practice for Design of Protected Measures for Methane, Carbon Dioxide, Ground Gases for New Buildings. And then also the characteristic situation 2, level of protection, whichever is the highest. So what we're looking to do is to make sure each individual house has a degree of protection, which they may not need, but we're erring on the side of caution, and we have to, given the example you gave earlier. So before works commence, it is no foundation works. So they can't start, they can clear the level of topsoil, but that's it. But if they start putting big spades in the ground, they've got to come back to us with a ground gas protection report, and that's got to go to our public protection colleagues who are experts in this. They do understand it far better than I do. And that's got to be consistent with these good practice guides, which the condition sets out. This condition has been through legal services, because again, it's a serious issue. We have to get it right. I think when we start talking about things like public safety, whether it's through highways, ground gas, whatever it is, it's black and white. It's got to be safe. So these conditions here have been through our legal services. They've checked it, and they're also happy with the wording of those conditions. So we've got to make sure the buildings are sealed to prevent any sort of ingress, and that's, of course, with vents, etc. The buildings have to be able to breathe. We have to be certain then that there's no contamination or potential for contamination of any ground gases coming up into those vents, into living spaces. So it's about protecting those vents and making sure the building still breathes whilst being protected from potential ground gases. And then we have condition 8, which is, again, no buildings should be brought into use or occupied until the applicant has submitted a validation and verification report to the approved methodology. So we approve the methodology in condition 7, and that then requires a developer to say, well, this is what I've done. We say, well, great, prove it. Where's the verification report? That's also monitored through the building warrant stage. And then we've got the condition 9, which this came from the Coal Authority. This has been done, the redundant boreholes, etc. That was all done for phase 1. So were conditions 6, 7 and 8. They were all done for phase 1 for the houses that are already built and are occupied. And we've carried them through to this. So we've had that degree of consistency. And these conditions are updated to reflect the passage of time. And we certainly would expect the boreholes that are no longer required. So the applicant had to go on site and do multiple boreholes so we could understand where the adits, where the to get a much better picture of where the redundant mine workings are. Pardon me. So a lot of those boreholes obviously aren't required. So we just need to make sure they are properly sealed, and that's what that condition does. We would certainly, condition doesn't say it, but the expectation, given it's come from the Coal Authority, is that there would be a consultee for that condition. So, sorry, that's been a bit long-winded, but it's an important issue, and I hope that sort of helps to answer answer the question.
Thank you, Chair. Full answer there, and I appreciate the simplicity of the reply.
Chair, can I just add just a bit more to this? For members who are either new to the committee or have not seen this sort of debate play out, basically, where you've got ground gas and it's been demonstrated to be there by survey work, you need to do two things. You need to stop the gas getting into the house, and you need to stop it accumulating, because then there's going to be risk of explosion or poisoning people. So you do that. So you stop it getting into the house through design, and you stop it accumulating by having the proper ventilation in how the foundations are designed, or you have active ventilation. You only use active ventilation where the gas levels are extraordinarily high, but you do see it sometimes. For example, where there's radon gas, for example, where you can't have any sort of build-up for it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen?
I need to add one thing, Don.
Yes?
Right. This is a very unusual period, but it happens occasionally. And David mentioned the fact there'd been an addendum report circulated. From when this report was put to bed and put on the agenda to now, we've had a new version of the National Planning Policy Framework issued, the third one in the last year or so. So what we need to make sure is that it's not that this scheme was compliant with the last version of the National Planning Policy Framework because it was submitted some time ago, but on the date we make the decision, it has to be compliant with national policy. And that addendum report is saying that we feel that the application is compliant, and this decision will be compliant with the new National Planning Policy Framework. So we will need that particularly minuting.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Solicitor?
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, would anybody like to put a recommendation forward? Georgina Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to propose that we accept the recommendations with all the conditions as set out. I would just like to emphasise again the highways. I know that the highways might not look at this application and say that immediately poses a safety issue in itself, but the cumulative effect of everything in that area, recent developments, you know, the school, there's so much going on in that area, and I think if we could emphasise the need to really take that seriously. It is disappointing, I know that it was before your time, but you know, all the time Section 106, when you see £100,000, and you're immediately thinking all the things you could do with £100,000, and you know, needing done in the area, and it's not clear and transparent about what that money's being used for. And I really think we could, and this is probably true of local authorities, but I really think Section 106, in terms of liaising with the local councils about what's needed and transparency of what the money's been spent on, and really making sure, to put it in blood, that we squeeze as much as we can out of developers for, you know, the community gain. Some people, and I know in the town, some people commenting, it's a shame it's not social housing. And it is, because that's a crisis. We're absolutely critically short of social housing. But we're short of housing per se. And actually, because there's a shortage of housing, that puts all prices up. More and more people turning properties into Airbnb, that's putting private rent up. People still renting, I can just charge what they want now. And that perpetuates social injustices and everything. So more housing is a good thing. And when I look, you know, at the list, when you listed the houses, and I think there's sort of 47 four-beds. I mean, there's probably about a dozen four-bedroom houses in the social housing market in Berwick. And it gives you an idea of how few there are. Bungalows, people desperate for bungalows. People think about elderly people, but there's also young families with disabled children as well. So we've obviously, I don't think there's been negativity, but we've rightly been picking up a few things about Section 106 and some and technicalities around and all the rest of it. But actually, the fact that there's this map housing coming to Berwick in a suitable spot for housing is something that's really positive, and I'd like to support it.
Good, thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor.
Chair, can I just clarify with Councillor Hill? I think you said propose accept the recommendation with all conditions and the 106, just for clarity in the minutes, if that's okay. Thank you.
Anybody like to speak to that motion? No, we've all feel we've made our points through the questions, I think. Yeah. You happy with that, Councillor Hill? Want to say any more? Very briefly.
I was going to comment, actually.
Yes.
Now you've asked me. If we are going to, the point about design, if we're going to pick up on developers about the quality of design, we've got to make sure that the quality of houses from our arm's length regeneration company is also of a high standard, isn't it?
So, Councillor Hill has summed up. All those in favour of the recommendation? Unanimous, not against. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That one is approved.
Chair, can I just add something? And I didn't mention it because it wasn't part of the deliberation. But in terms of Councillor Hill's point about Section 106 and member involvement, I took a paper to the strategic leadership team last month with the proposal that we have a member board for looking at Section 106. Not to involve parish and town councils, but to invite their comments to that board as well, though. So I'll be working up a system for that, and I'll circulate it around all members in due course for comments. Okay.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, only other items on the agenda today. Item number 6, appeal update for January 24. For members' information, pages 39 to 52. And we've also got a Section 106 update, January 2024, pages 53 to 56, also for members' information. I have no urgent business today, but would just like to thank you for your participation and your appropriate and good comments on this application. Thank you.